Psych with Mike and Brett is now a book. Psych with Mike and Brett, A User's Guide to Being Human, is our new book that's available at Kendall Hunt, Barnes & Noble, and on Amazon. Pick up a copy today and leave a review. Also, find us on YouTube and subscribe to the podcast. That really helps us out. Now, it's time for Psych with Mike and Brett.
Welcome into the Psych with Mike Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan.
And I am Brett Newcomb.
And we're laughing because we are recording on Memorial Day in 2025.
Yeah, time flies when you're having fun.
So we're just goofing off because it's a holiday.
Oh, we're working. We're always working.
We're always working.
Yeah.
I sent you some topics, and the first one that we're going to talk about is one that I actually feel very close to. And let me just tell you what the name of the title of the article is. People with who deep down felt unwanted and unloved growing up often display these 7 behaviors later in life. And I don't know how much I'm invested in the 7 behaviors, but I was telling you that I do feel very sympathetic to the title, because I've often felt like that's how I grew up, is feeling unwanted and unloved.
I'm sorry that was your experience.
Yeah.
But you're probably in a very large number group.
I mean, I
if
can't
you only
imagine.
knew.
Yes, I think that there's a lot of people that would resonate with.
Well, as Groucho Marx once said, I don't want to belong to any club that would accept me as a member.
Mm-hmm.
But so these kind of articles are interesting and for me.
Can I ask you a question before we get into that? So I know a little bit about your background. I know why I felt that way, right?
Yeah.
And I know a little bit about your background, and you grew up in at least an abrasive, if not abusive, alcoholic
absolutely.
situation.
Yeah.
Did you feel wanted and loved?
I don't know that I ever looked at it from that perspective. I was just trying to survive.
Yeah.
So for me, I became hypervigilant and acutely aware of the surround and more focused on other people than on me, so that I could figure out how to navigate the day safely.
Right, which is one of the behaviors that they talk about in the article.
That's where I was going to go with this.
Yeah.
These things are triggers for saying, well, this is a summary, this is conclusive, this is definitive. And I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're useful articles when you read this stuff, because they're kind of, it's kind of like reading articles about nonverbal behaviors. One of the things that we used to teach in teaching people how to be therapists is you have to become adept at reading nonverbal behaviors.
Right.
And those are very, very complex and hard to read.
Mm-hmm.
So you read the sense of the room, you read the sense of the individual, their rigidity, their relaxation, their stillness, their hypervigilance, their reactivity, their startle effect, their breathing, their eye focus, their facial expression. There's so many things. And so if you go in a research mode and try to find articles about, well, what does it mean if your eyes are rapidly blinking, or if you hold your shoulders stiff, or if you walk leaning like you're leaning. I read an article once about teenage boys that walk as if they're walking against a strong wind, and their relationship with their dads. So that's interesting, and apparently there's a lot of research to support global summarization of those concepts. But the challenge then becomes, and the literature says, the challenge then becomes, does this interpretation fit specifically for the client that you're with, or the person that you're with? So it's like a 2-channel observation. I can observe your nonverbal behaviors in my room, my client room, and I can make global summaries of, well, generally this means X, Y, and Z. But then I have to take the time to ask you specifically, did X happen to you? Did Y happen to you? Did Z happen to you?
Or listen attentively, so that when you disclose that information, I hear it and I can note it.
And facilitate an exploration of it as a contributor to whatever's going on in your life. How does that have meaning? So if you were physically abused or sexually abused as a child, and we can pull that into your consciousness, can we then examine from that, how does that affect your trust in other people? How does that affect your relationships with other people? How does that affect you sexually? How does that affect you emotionally? We can examine that. So I can, and so then as we're examining it, we're talking about it, you're remembering it, you're saying whatever you're saying. I also continue to read your nonverbals. And so if I see what I've been told are bumps in the road that indicate blocks or resistance or avoidance, then I can gently ask you, hey, generally this means, like you just crossed your arms, you folded your arms, that generally means a resistance or an avoidance. Is that what it means here? Well, no, I'm cold. Your room is cold. Okay, can I get you a blanket and turn up the temperature, whatever? And then do you uncross your arms, or you still sit there with them crossed, you know? So the challenge in nonverbal behaviors, however passionately you think, oh, that's important and I need to learn it, the challenge is remembering to identify with specificity for the individual that you're talking to. So does it mean this when you talk? So if your voice drops 2 octaves, or if you accelerate the speed of your response in agitation or in happiness or in whatever, I don't want to grossly interpret that from a category of literature that I've read. I want to find out what it means for you specifically, so that I understand you correctly.
So let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
When I asked you, did you feel loved, knowing your background, and you said, I don't know that I thought about it that way, I was just trying to survive, then what that sparked in me was this idea, I think that's true. Most people who probably feel unloved are just trying to survive.
Well,
would that be...
I don't disagree with that, but again, it's global versus
It's global,
personal.
right.
I am acutely conscious that I had individual people that I felt loved me. Was it the nest of my family?
Gotcha.
No.
Yeah.
Was it someone? I mean, I was so blessed. I had wonderful school teachers who understood some of my family background and who said to me, "You're more than this. This doesn't have to define you. You can write your own script. You can live your own life. You don't have to go down this path that seems to be preordained for you to live in this level. You can do something different if you want to." And they refused to accept lesser quality work from me. But they were emotionally supportive. It wasn't like they were hateful and said, "This is an F work. You're a stupid person."
Right.
They were like, "You didn't put yourself into this, and I'm not going to accept it. So do it over." And I'll give you credit for it. I mean, even though the grading cycle has passed, I'll give you credit for it if you do an appropriate job. So go back and do it the way I know you can do it. And they said to me, "You are smarter than this. You work harder than this. Focus yourself and make it happen if you want me to respect it." And I had many teachers like that throughout my education. Then I found other adults that would treat me in a similar, bosses who would say to me, "You're not just a number on the employment list. You're somebody I see and know. Let me teach you how to do this. You can do a better job. You're more useful to me. I like you more." So there were people who cared about me, and I accepted that. Although I also accepted that it was a balanced investment on my part and on their part. I had to perform. I had to do something. I had to be useful. I had to earn their respect by my performance. But then I got their respect, and I could feel it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we're talking about the same thing.
No, I think we are. And,
Okay.
and I am having an epiphany just sitting here right now, because hearing you say that, I'm now, going through my life in my own head and thinking, I think there were people like that you described, your teachers, in my life that I may not have completely recognized to their fullest potential when I was living, because I was just trying to survive. But I think that if I had been able to make that connection, it would have been really helpful for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so that's part of what you do in therapy.
Yeah.
Is you have those conversations with your client and hopefully facilitate their capacity to look beyond their defenses.
Right.
And their defenses are a safety capsule around them that they've created from their learnings and their experience and their environment to try to survive. And so if you want to say to somebody, there are different paths that you could be walking, they have to open a door or a window to see the path and to step through onto the path.
Right.
And that's test and trial and error. And you want to have them try to do that safely in your room. So you can practice, you can rehearse. I can't tell you the number of times we had rehearsal conversations in my office with clients who were trying to rehearse how to say something specific to their mother or their brother or their husband or their boss, instead of just exploding and having a meltdown or lashing out, which would be dysfunctional. are there ways that you can behave differently and then get recognized for behaving differently? Are there ways that you can navigate and negotiate a different understanding of who you are or why you are? You can't just say, that's unfair, or that's wrong, or that shouldn't be this way. You have to say, look at my own behavior. Did I contribute? Did I screw up?
Right.
Did I come to work ready to work? Did I bring my tools? How many times have you said to students in class, you didn't come to school with paper and pencil? Okay, well, maybe they don't have paper and pencil at home. Maybe they come from that poor of an environment. So then you say, let me give you some, but you bring it back tomorrow. And if they bring it back tomorrow, ready to go to work, you can say, hey, you remembered your stuff today. Thank you. If they don't bring it back tomorrow, one of the things you might need to understand, because I've seen this too, I remember my wife had a child from such a poor environment that she went out and bought clothes for this kid and gave the kid the clothes, gave the family the clothes. So the kid wore those clothes for a week and never saw him again because the grandmother had sold them to somebody else for whatever reason she sold them for. But then the kid shows up the next week in the same old clothes that she used to have. And my wife said, well, where are your new clothes? Oh, they're gone. So you can't say that kid's too lazy or that kid's not old enough to know how to do laundry.
Right.
There's some other environmental circumstance.
Right. And so often those experiences that we have, we internalize those and we assume as a child that those are a reflection of us. We develop
think it's
shame
normal.
messages. Right.
We think how you grow up is normal. You don't do comparative parenting until you're 5 or 6 years old and start to go to school. Then you see other kids at school, and then you're starting to say things like, well, at Joey's house, they get to eat ice cream. Or at Joey's house, they have a color television. Or at Joey's house, they have a dog. We don't have any of that. So my parents are, whatever. So until then, kids think life is normal, however they're living it. And so if you slap them around, if you yell at them, if you scare them, if you do whatever you do, they think that's normal. Then they do what you are suggesting because they're trained by the parenting that they receive. It's your fault. You made me do this. See what you made me do. I remember one time I was, as a child growing up, we had a breezeway. It was called a breezeway, but it was a small hallway between the house and the garage. Right. And our laundry facility was out there. So I was instructed to go out and clean the concrete floor with hot water from the hot water tank by the laundry. So I was hosing it down, having a good time spraying the hell out of everything in that room. And my stepmother came out and got burned by the hot water.
Oh, no.
And slapped me. She slapped me halfway across the room for squirting her with the hot water. I didn't even know she was there. So, but I was a bad person. I deliberately tried to scald her. I deliberately tried to hurt her. Then that brings my father into it. You try to abuse my wife. What the hell's wrong with you? I'll pull my belt off and beat you. That was all on me because I was inefficient, unaware, mean-spirited.
Because you were doing a job that they told you to do.
Yeah. Without instructing me on how to do it.
Right.
And I was having a good time doing it. But anyway, so you remember things like that, and you say, well, that's my fault. I made that happen. That's what you're told. But part of you says, no, I didn't do that.
Right.
So
hopefully
how do you process
hopefully
that?
A part of you says that, yeah.
Well, I don't know. And I mean, I do know, but in terms of a client, I can't project my assumptions onto them.
Right. Right.
And then you're familiar with reaction formation. Reaction formation is when I'm distraught about something in an aggressive level, distraught about something because it's something I want. We were talking to somebody this weekend about a next door neighbor who had a daughter that was gay. And she was living in a relationship with another woman, and she was not functioning independently and was still taking a lot of money and support from her parents. So the next door neighbor was really outraged and enraged that she was such a drain financially on these people who didn't have much themselves. And so she would always complain about, I can't believe so-and-so is taking this money. I can't believe so-and-so is giving this money. I can't believe they're doing this. This is so horrible. Then one day we come home, she's gone, the neighbor, because she's left her husband and 3 kids to go live with a woman.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So she was so enraged and outraged about homosexual women.
Because she was covering up her own feelings.
Reaction formation.
Yeah.
So that really helped her husband. I said, oh, that's reaction formation.
Yeah. And so I wanted to touch on just a couple of these points that the article talks about. The first one that they talk about is difficulty forming secure relationships. I think if you feel unloved, you don't have a model for what love is. I think it's very difficult to form relationships. I would put that more under, from my perspective of psychology, more under attachment. But I think
so is that selecting safe people to be attached to, or is that dancing the dance with someone in an effective way?
I think it's both. I think that when you grow up in a situation where you feel unloved, or you don't have the skills, you didn't have relationship modeled for you, then what you're doing is what most of us end up doing, which is you're trying to find a puzzle piece that fits your pathology so that you can relive that previous trauma, trying to find a more effective, better outcome, which is what we all do. And that's why a woman can marry an alcoholic man 4 times in a row. He doesn't appear alcoholic when she meets him.
She reads the cues.
Yeah. And you're looking for that puzzle piece.
Or she finds a man who's workable and teaches him how to behave in an alcoholic way because that's what she knows.
That can be also. Absolutely.
I was laughing because when you said the puzzle piece, I don't have visual, I don't know how to say this. Like, there's a game called Blockus where you move these little blocks around and make patterns and try to keep other people from completing their pattern. It's a board game. I'm terrible at that because I can't see those things. I don't look at that. I don't see that pattern visually. I don't do visual puzzle pieces. I do people puzzle pieces really well, but I don't do a 1,000-piece puzzle. What I end up doing is
that's actually a subtest on the WACE.
Yeah. I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
It says I'm retarded.
No, don't say retarded.
I'm intellectually challenged. But I'll find a piece that almost fits.
And then hammer it in.
Make it fit.
Absolutely.
I'm really good at that.
Make it fit.
Yeah.
That's right. So the second thing that I really wanted to kind of expand on was you had earlier talked about the hypervigilance. I think that is such a common, and again, we can't say things are universal. We shouldn't say things are universal. But that hypervigilance tends to be a situation that I see commonly in clients when they grow up in environments where being aware of what's going on is a survival skill.
Yeah.
I have told people all the time, I knew when I was growing up, when my dad's key hit the lock in the door, whether it was safe to be in the room, whether we needed to be in another room, or whether we needed to be under a bed.
You can read the room. You go into a room full of people and you know who's safe and who's not safe.
Right.
You don't know why.
Right.
You just know that they are. And I used to tell my students that all the time in counseling classes. Survivors always recognize other survivors. I don't know what you survived, but I know that you survived something traumatic because of the things that I can see about the way you navigate the environment. So again, the global understanding versus the specific interpretation. So I don't know, and that's what I would say to them too. I say, your clients will know if you're a survivor. They won't know what you survived unless you tell them, and that's inappropriate. You're not supposed to tell them. You're not supposed to talk about you in the session. You're supposed to talk about them. But they will know if you understand. They will know if you see. They'll know if you see them because hypervigilance. They're scanning and checking, and they read the signals.
So when you have a client who presents with these issues of unlovability, I would argue this is one of the ways in which counseling is really a form of reparenting. Because what I want to do when I'm treating people who present with this is to try and help them go back and resolve these traumatic events in a more favorable way. So the way that we pick our significant others, we also can work through some of those things in therapy. What you have to then, as a therapist, I feel like that my goal is to be a consistent parental model.
And there's so many different ways to phrase that for clients to understand. If you like neuro-linguistic programming, how do you use vocabulary to process concepts? I would often say to clients, it's like being an actor in a play. You have a script that's been written for you, and you have to say your lines, or the play falls apart. But it is possible to be an actor in a different play. It is possible to have a different script and speak from that script. And when you first attempt to do that, you're going to confuse and anger all the people in the play that you've been in, who are expecting you to say the rote lines that they know you're supposed to say, because your lines are a cue for their lines. And so if you say, yeah, I'm not happy about this, then they have a response to that. If you're not happy about it, you know what you can do, you know. My dad used to always say, you don't like it here, don't let the front door hit you in the ass on the way out, you know. Hit the road. Don't come back. But if you once you go out the door, you can't come
coming
back.
back.
So
Right.
be sure.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, oh my God. So as a therapist, you can say to them, it is possible to learn a new script and to speak from the new script, the one that you've written. But be aware of how that's going to impact everybody
Right.
in the cast in the old play.
They're not going to be cool with that.
No.
Yeah, that goes back to the drama triangle. We don't want to.
Right.
I don't want to unpack that right now. But so for me, when I think about this idea of reparenting, there are a couple of things that I feel like are really important when I'm doing therapy. One is I want to be consistent. I want to be a consistent representation for that client. That means that you keep your appointments, you show up on time, you know, you don't run 3 hours over, you attend to them when they're in the room.
Yeah. You bought the time, I'm responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's so huge for people when they're especially going into therapy maybe for the first time.
Well, that's why we teach therapists. Don't take notes while, you know, don't be busy writing on a piece of paper or looking in your computer files while the client's talking. Look at the client. Pay attention to the client. If you need to make notes, make them after they leave the room.
Right. I mean, if you can do that, that is the best, because it
teach
makes them
yourself to do
feel
that.
attended to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you want to be mirroring them, which is that Kohutian idea of, you know, reflecting back to people the things that they do
we both
well.
used to do supervision for trainees. And I can remember sitting with trainees who would take like 10 pages of notes in a 1 hour session.
Oh, yeah.
They would write it all down. They're busy writing and
Novels,
looking at the
yeah.
paper, not looking at the client, and not reading any of the nonverbals, just listen to what the client said and taking dictation, which is not therapy. And then when you do supervision with them, you say, well, tell me what happened in this session, tell me what's going on with this client. They start reading to you.
Would you tell them?
No, put it down.
Tell
me what
wouldn't,
happened.
Yeah,
Talk to me.
I wouldn't let my
either.
students read off of a piece of paper if they were
And
doing
then I would say to them,
clinicals.
don't do this again.
Yeah.
You know, go back into another session and don't. If you take notes, you do it
Right.
after the client leaves.
Because they need to feel attended to.
But then again, professionally, you have to teach them how to take the notes that the insurance company will require and respond to. You know, how do you phrase this for whatever trigger buttons you need triggered in order to get coverage for
Right.
your client,
Right.
not for you,
Right.
but so the client will get paid for coming to see you as much as the insurance, if they have insurance, will pay. So that's an art form too.
And just FYI for anybody out there who may be a new therapist, batshit crazy is not an official diagnosis.
Also, there are any number of electronic programs that will provide you with predetermined sentences that insurance companies are more likely to
Yeah.
approve. Be careful about using those because, again, it's like the nonverbal conversation. You get away from the specificity of your individual client to the globally safe generic terms. Stuff is happening at home. There used to be like mother-child difficulty as a DSM category. They took that away. You can't
Right.
use that anymore. But for a long time, people were just mother-child difficulty. That's what's going on here. You got a 14-year-old boy that slaps his mother around because there's no dad in the home, and she's trying to tell him you have to turn off the TV and turn off your cell phone at 10 o'clock and go to sleep. And so he gets up and slaps her. Or he says to her, if you turn off my cell phone, because she can go online and turn it off, I'll break your TV set or I'll break the refrigerator. You'll be sorry. So then she's like, oh, I'm helpless. I can't do anything. Well, she is.
As long as she believes she is.
And as long as he believes he can do that.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So that's a difficult challenge. How do you change that dynamic? Maybe you don't, because it's not yours to change. It's theirs to change. But you want to hold them in a place and help them write a new script and test the script.
We have a new book out. It is called Psych with Mike and Brett, a user's guide for being human. We would love everybody to go out and get a copy of that book and to leave a review. That really, really helps us out. The music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue. We would love it if you would subscribe to this show so you find Psych with Mike and Brett on the YouTubes and hit the subscribe button there. That is really helpful for us. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike and Brett.